Hello there, and a very warm welcome to Chazingdra Chats, the show where we take a stroll through the life stories of people in the Pokémon community, discovering the 6 Pokémon on their dream team along the way. I'm Charlie Merriman, merry by name, merry by nature, otherwise known as Chazingdra, a host and commentator for the Pokémon Video Game Championship series, and a content creator. And this week, as every week, I very much hope my guest and I can make your day merry, because I have the pleasure of being joined by, at this point, a decade of experience hosting the Pokémon World Championships, Anna Prosser. Anna, how are you doing?
Hi. That's such a good intro. Oh my goodness. Married by name, married by nature. I wish I had something like that. I need to figure out how to do like pro by vocation and by I don't know. I'll figure
pro
it out.
Is good. Yeah, you have something. You've got something you can work with there. Yeah, we can workshop that. We'll workshop that.
Okay, thank you. I'll need your help on that.
Sounds good. For anyone who's not so familiar with you, Anna, can you give a brief introduction to yourself?
Sure. I always find this very difficult because I think that I've realized my whole thing is just kind of having a very eclectic and weird collection of occupations and enthusiasms. But most people who are watching this probably know me because I have been a host and commentator, presenter, interviewer in the geek and gaming space for almost 15 years now. Started out as someone who is involved in the pro gaming team Evil Geniuses and doing a lot of hosting and things there. People may know me from working with Twitch Studios at Twitch, but I see myself first and foremost as a performing artist, and most recently got to perform a musical number at Pokémon Worlds, where I was also the host. So I would call myself a professional, very weird performer.
Very well. I would say, multi-talented, but we can work with very weird as well. If you
multi-hyphenate, yes.
Multi-hyphenate,
sorry, my bad.
exactly,
I'm a multi-hyphenate performer extraordinaire.
There we go. Don't do yourself down. Yeah. Might I add as well, and I think I commented this on one of your Instagram posts, that that song that you sang in at Worlds, Just Beyond, is my favourite of the Worlds album this year. It's so catchy. You and Nate Wants to Battle, of course. I recommend to anyone who hasn't heard it, go and check that out. Just Beyond is the name of the song. And I can't wait to take a deeper dive into all of your multi-hyphenate-ism that you've just teed us up with there. And yeah, this is how Anna and I met at the World Championships this year. I was casting there for the Pokemon video game, of course, and Anna was hosting. And we also bonded over that the shared life of an actor and doing auditions, doing self-tapes and things like that. The joys and indeed the woes. And it's just a pleasure to have you on the show right now, Anna. So shall we do this?
Yeah. Did you know I even had to do an audition backstage at Worlds? You get it. Yeah, you understand. The joys and the woes. Yeah,
no, absolutely. Yeah. When these things come in, they're always very quick turnarounds, and you just got to kind of drop everything and do a self-tape. Wow, backstage at Worlds as well. Okay, well, fingers crossed for you. I mean, have you heard back? Do you know if you've got that part yet or not?
I don't think so. It was for a Christmas commercial.
Classic.
People don't understand how these... Anyway, I'm sorry, I totally derailed your show. I'm a professional host, and then I'm like, let me talk about auditions. Anyway, yes, tell me what we're doing next.
Second take. Shall we do this?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, let's dive in. I'm looking forward to discovering more about your life story and, of course, your 6 Dream Team Pokemon. So to kick things off here, we're going to talk about gaming with your grandma and dad as a kid.
Yeah. People always like to ask, when did I get started gaming? Because it's become my whole profession. And the first 2 people that I ever gamed with were my dad, which is kind of a less surprising answer, but people are always a little shocked when I say that I started gaming with my grandma. She had an Intellivision console, which she called an Atari, which it's not an Atari, but it came out around the same time as an Atari. It was one of the first gaming consoles, and the controllers were they were connected with one of those spiral cords, like a phone, and they had a metal disc and number buttons, like a remote control. And they came with these little cards that came with each game that you would slide on top of the remote control. And then they had specific controls for every single game. And we used to play Night Stalker, which was basically a knockoff Pac-Man, and Donkey Kong, and one that was called something with swords that I barely understood, which is hilarious because later I became such a fantasy nerd and D&D nerd. And this one baseball game that is famous for being one of the first games that ever had human-sounding voice in it, that had the names of baseball players, and it would say "you're out" and stuff like that. So my grandma, for her generation, people would be surprised that perhaps a woman was the one who was kind of leading me in video games. But when I asked her about it, she was like, I never thought that was a thing for boys. I don't know why people would say that. And she bought it, and she would just like, she was very domestic. So she would do all of her like housework and gardening and all of that, and then just stay up till like 3 a.m. playing this Intellivision console. And that actually prompted me to do a bunch of research about like, why did video games become a boy thing? And learned that actually a lot of it had to do with just the way stores are laid out, that there's like a boys toys section and a girls toys section, and kind of arbitrarily video games ended up in the boys toys section, and that's kind of why it became considered a more socially accepted boy thing.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, as with all of the topics that all my guests provide, the entire episode could just be unpacking everything you said there, but I will try and limit myself in the interest of time. Something with swords, was that actually the name of the game, or you just couldn't remember?
No, it was I think, I want to say Swords and Sorcery, but I'm afraid I'm picking that up from another game.
I see.
But I don't know. Sure. Something like that.
And how good are we talking this synthesized human voice was?
Oh, not good at all. Like, implied at best.
But
it had a special like accessory that you had to plug into the Atari that was like, this is so wild. This accessory can make it sound like there's actually a human voice coming out of it. And it like, it's amazing. And I have it. I like inherited it from her, and it's in my arcade at home, and I like, it has a place of honor, but it's impossible to play now. It's like, the level of adapters that you have to use to get it to work on a TV that I can even get a hold of is wild.
Yeah, I'm sure. When you said, I have it now, I inherited it from my grandma, I, for a split second, thought you meant, I now have that voice. That's just how you speak. And I was like, no, Anna, you sound pretty human to me, but, I mean...
yeah.
Sounds good to me. And then, I totally get that. Your grandma didn't understand why it was so... why it was seen as a boy thing, and fascinating that, well, again, be fascinating to explore that topic more deeply, but the fact that it really just came down to store layouts, I guess, that's a discussion for another time, but it's great that your grandma and your dad were the ones who inspired you to get into it, and again, as you say, a rare thing, potentially, for a grandma to provide that for their grandchild. So, as soon as you started playing video games, was it instantly sort of love at first sight?
That's a good question. My dad was more of a PC gamer, and he built us a PC really early on, like before most people had a home PC. And I played, one of my favorite games on that was Captain Comic. And I remember playing it for hours and hours on end, and I was like, this easy game that I used to play when I was a kid, I will buy it now, as someone who's enthusiastic about retro games. And I bought it for NES, which I didn't even know it came out on NES. I played the first level, and I couldn't beat it. And I was like, did I just like imagine that I was good at this game? And so I guess I bring that up as like kind of a metaphor where it's like, I have always absolutely loved video games, even if I'm not good at them. So I think that theme kind of pervades what I like to talk about with becoming an esports host and becoming a gaming entertainment professional, where it's like the tension between, I'm around all these professional gamers who are literally the top of the world in terms of skill in video games. But I've just always loved them. I just like them. And I think that's enough for my profession. I think also, like, talking about girl things versus boy things, as much as I did play the Atari and I played the PC, I did get kind of left behind my peers in video games because, like, my brother, for example, got a Game Boy for Christmas. And so it was like, I would only get to play the Game Boy if he wasn't playing the Game Boy. And then by the time I got one, because I complained about it enough, then people had moved on to other consoles. And then like my brother got an N64 for Christmas, and I could only play it when he wasn't playing it, that kind of thing. So the first console that I actually bought myself and had like all to myself after the Game Boy was a Wii, actually. And so I have like a really big soft spot for the Wii because I was actually I was starting college by then, and it became this centerpiece that all my friends would gather around. So as much as like when you're asking like, was it love at first sight? Did you know that video games were your thing? I don't think I can claim that like I've been a hardcore gamer since I was a child, but the love has absolutely always been there. And by the time I was kind of allowed to like make it a centerpiece of my life, it brought this huge community together. And that has really been the theme of why I love video games, because it brought people I love together, like me and my grandma and my dad. It brought friends in college together, like some of my first really close women friends were the ones that would come over and like skip class and play Wii with me. So yeah, I think it was love at first sight in a very community oriented way.
That's wonderful. I mean, the community oriented stuff, not the skipping class stuff necessarily, but
as well. I mean, never skipping class.
Exactly. Everybody, make sure you're not. I see. That's a really fascinating start. And the Wii being your first console, I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. My final question on this point is, your brother now still into games?
Dude, it's so weird. My brother and I are so opposite. Like, I think in our hearts we're very similar, but like, I reacted to kind of the emotional palette of us by becoming someone who like wants to talk about feelings at length and wants to express everything. And my brother's kind of like very pragmatic and almost like very protective of his emotional energy. So he's very not sentimental and I'm very sentimental. So he was actually recently, I don't know how I got a hold of it, but somehow, you know, in the shuffle of like, this was at mom's house and now it's at my house kind of thing, I ended up with his N64. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have your N64. Do you want it? It's such a treasure. And he's like, no, you can keep it. So I have his N64. He's still a gamer. Like we still, you know, we hop on, we used to play League of Legends a lot together and we trade gaming recommendations, but he definitely has never had any inclination to be like, oh, I would love to make video games part of my career the way that you did. And I think maybe that's because he wants it to just stay only for fun. And I can understand that.
Yeah, definitely. It is that interesting line, isn't it, where you're working in the video game space of, but now can I do this to switch off or not? It's, anyway, again, a topic for a different time. But Anna, now it's time to ask you what's going to be the first Pokemon on your dream team. So as a reminder, everyone, the aim here is not for Anna to build the most competitively viable team in any way. It's just the Pokemon that have been the most special to Anna over the years, and she can define that for herself in whichever way she would like. I have no idea what they are. She's decided on them in advance. So Anna, tell us, what's going to be Pokemon number 1?
If you know me at all, it's probably obvious. The first one is going to be Eevee. And even from just this interview, you can probably tell why, which is I hate locking myself into one path in life. I really like to have lots of options and to be able to change my mind in who I want to be and how I want to show up and express myself. And Eevee's the only Pokemon that has such a like colorful array of ways that she can evolve. And I think my favorite evolution changes like from week to week. So I like to pick Eevee because then I have the option of being like, and I'm an Umbreon, or like, and I'm a Sylveon, you know? So yeah, Eevee's my favorite.
Yeah. It makes a lot of sense. I love how Pokemon and people generally have really been embracing that idea of potential when it comes to Eevee. And exactly what you were saying before, you're a multi-hyphenate, and Eevee could not be a better representation of the multi-hyphenate Pokemon. Do you recall a time that you were first aware of Eevee? Has it always been your favorite?
Ooh, that's a really good question. I mean, honestly, probably the truth is that way back then when I first saw Eevee and was like, that's my favorite, it was probably just because she's so cute. Like, I mean, okay, like in my lap right now is this.
Here's what I prepared earlier.
This is a real live Eevee that I keep at home. So honestly, I mean, like, I don't think there's any shame in picking a Pokemon as your favorite because it's cute. But then I just learned more about her and identified even more with her.
Yeah, 100%. Well, a perfect first member of your team. Eevee, welcome to Anna's Dream Team. Everybody, if you're enjoying this chat with Anna, please do like and subscribe. It would mean a huge amount and always does go such a long way. But for now, we have so much more conversation to have. So let's go from there now into being a church theatre kid and, in your own words, a mega choir nerd.
Yeah. I was trying to think of like how to explain that my whole childhood was about like acting, singing, and community groups basically. And yeah, I was one of those kids. I had like a really, really strong group of friends from like, I don't know, middle school through high school because of a church youth group. And all of those kids also were consistently in musicals that the church would put on. And we had a really cool director who would actually like write musicals for us based on kind of our skills. And then we would put them on. And I kind of didn't even realize what a gift that was at the time. And I also kind of didn't realize that like when my group of friends wanted to hang out, someone would call me. And this was, you know, not all of our friends had cell phones at that point. And so someone would call me and then I would call like 20 or 30 different people to be like, all of us are going bowling. And then I would go in my minivan and pick up like 10 of those people. And then some other cars would go and pick up 10 of those people. And then we would all go bowling. And I think that that's kind of a unique friend experience for a high schooler. And the reason I bring this up is because, like I said, with video games and everything, it's very clear that I've looked for community in all the things I've done. And someone recently called me a pack animal, meaning that like whenever I want to do something, I want everyone to do the thing with me. I want everyone to enjoy it. So yeah, I think that the reason I included that was twofold. One, just to be like, yeah, and I was still singing and speaking and being in front of people and being on stage because that felt like my calling. And also I was trying to do it with all of my best friends all the time as a community.
Are you sure that you weren't just living in the opening titles of some American sitcom? You're driving the van and everyone piles in. You're driving off into the sunset to a bowling alley.
It was, I mean, that minivan would look really dumb in front of a sunset. It was not. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think as I talk about these things more and more and like look back on my life, my mom was a speech teacher also. So she was very, from a young age, very happy to kind of like put me on stage and allow me to speak in front of people. The legend is that she would like sit me in the middle of the floor as a baby before I could even walk and have me just talk to her friends at like 1 year old. And so I've been trained to speak on a stage, and to do it in a way that hopefully brings people together. I don't know why I'm bringing that up. But you're inviting me to just ruminate on my life. So yeah, sorry, I'm going on.
No, that's very insightful. Yeah, I think there's probably a lot of merit in that. These young experiences really do pave the way. Okay, so church theatre, and Mega Choir Nerd. So you really enjoyed the performing side of things when you were younger. You sort of felt at home there. But again, do you have an earliest memory of doing that?
Ooh. Well, I started performing in church choir at 3, and I vaguely remember that. You mentioned the Mega Choir Nerd. I didn't really talk about that. And this is totally not really answering your question, but might give you some insight too. By the time I was a senior in high school, I was so deep in choir that I had, I think, 5 hours a day where I was in some kind of choir class out of my whole day of classes, because I was in an ensemble choir, I was in the giant competitive choir, I was in a music theory class, and I think that was it. But so like choir became my whole life. I like ate lunch in the choir room and everything. But yeah, that's not an earliest memory, but that's like the level of how much I loved music.
Yeah, the fact that you had that memory of church theatre when you were 3 years old, that shows that it was a significant time for you, because that's a very, very early memory to have. And also, this is really useful for people, for example, who weren't aware of your singing until the World Championships this year, that really it does go back that far. Did you have a favourite thing to sing when you were that age?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, probably Disney movie stuff. I think I can still sing and speak through the entirety of The Little Mermaid. Wow. I was really into that as a kid. And yeah, no, I would say definitively like Disney and musicals.
Yeah, makes total sense. Little Mermaid was actually my favourite Disney film when I was younger.
Really?
But I was like unfamiliar with the word for mermaid, so I called it The Little Marmalade instead.
That's so cute.
But it might have been a reference to her hair as well. I was going to say, do you think maybe you enjoy The Little Mermaid so much because, I mean, there is a resemblance there with Ariel, I would say.
Absolutely. The amount of redheaded characters that have been my favorite is like very telling. Very telling. And actually, like, here's the secret exclusive for your show. I am not a natural redhead. I have the most medium brown. Like, if you go to a store and you look at the hair dye and you try to match my natural color, it will just be called medium brown. Like the most basic medium. But I've known ever since I was a kid. I remember there was a girl in my class growing up from kindergarten onward named Nancy, and she had the most beautiful red hair. And I remember looking at her and being like, that's how I was supposed to be born. That's who I was. That's the hair I was supposed to have. So I always say I just self-identify as a redhead. It's a disorder that my hair doesn't grow red, so I have to fix it.
Yeah. There you go. Prescribed. Well, brilliant. Now it's time to learn who's going to be joining Evie on your dream team.
Oh yeah, who's next? Oh, okay. The next one is Alolan Executor. Which is maybe kind of random, especially because I started out being like, I like cute Pokemon. And I don't know that I would put him in the cute category. But another one of those community experiences I had with Pokemon was around Pokemon Go. When, the great going outside happened for all of us. And I was living in Seattle for most of that. And so I would go out and I would meet a lot of people. And me and my friends got to like have something we all enjoyed doing and talking about together. And at that time, for whatever reason, just one of my strongest Pokemon was Alolan Executor. And I hated that at the time. I was like, ugh, such a weird looking one to be one of my favorites. But I just developed this huge love. And I think a lot of times he would kind of like clip out of the top of the frame because he was so tall and it's just like so silly. So I just developed like a huge love for him, and he kind of became a symbol of being part of a community that was gathering around something that brought them joy. Yeah.
Pokemon Go was an absolute phenomenon when it was launched. I remember those summer days in 2016 of hitting just wandering around town trying to find these Pokemon. Alolan Executor, and as you say, couldn't be more different from Eevee, I would say. Eevee's tiny, Alolan Executor's massive. Definitely a different vibe. So I guess we've introduced Eevee and Alolan Executor to your team, but we haven't talked about where Pokemon came into things. So you had those very early gaming experiences with your grandma and dad, and it was your brother who got the Game Boy first. So what was your introduction to Pokemon?
I did play Pokemon on his Game Boy. I remember specifically we were on vacation. He had already finished, and I stole it and played for like 2 hours. And that's my earliest Pokemon memory, but I didn't play much Pokemon after that until, honestly, basically adulthood, like until I became a gaming professional and I actually had the resources to kind of make time to play Pokemon. But something that, like, I don't know, I sometimes like hate to bring this up because there's another undercurrent of being a woman in gaming, and especially a woman professional who's been around as long as I have. I think things have improved, but especially back when I started, there was a lot of like, you're only here because they want eye candy, or like, you don't really know what you're talking about, or you don't really like games or whatever. So Pokemon, for me, some of the earlier games, the pace of them was really tough for me to keep attention on, like the turn-based combat and the kind of like the tall grass mechanics and things like that were a little bit difficult for me. So sometimes I never really made it through a lot of those games, but it was the card game that really sucked me in. And then honestly, my absolute favorite Pokemon game that felt like, now I understand what I love about Pokemon was Arceus, which is so like, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud because everyone's going to be like, fake fan, bah! But like, but I think that like it gave me the opportunity to play at the pace that I had always wanted to play. And, I shiny charmed right away, and I got to shiny hunting and things. And honestly, that experience is what kind of took me back and made me play some of the earlier games with even a little more appreciation of understanding like how I like to play, what I like to look for. The fact that actually all this time I've been a shiny hunter and that's been my favorite thing. And yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
That's fascinating to hear that you were you're a shiny hunter all along and you never realized it. It's something I very much enjoyed doing as well. So is that something that you've fully lent into now? I mean, are you building up a collection? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, Pokemon Go also did that for me in a way. And some of the other ancillary non-mainline games kind of did that for me. I guess I would say I've totally leaned into that because I think I used to be worried about like, again, trying to hide that maybe like my competitive skill isn't as high as the people that I'm hanging around. Like even, the commentators or the pro gamers that were always around. And having hosted Pokemon for 10 years, you don't want to show any weakness. You know what I mean? So I think I was really worried about like making sure that my competitive skill was the highest it could be and showing that off. And then when I realized that like, no, actually my job is to perform the awe and respect that we all feel for these pro gamers because they have put the time and the effort and they have the minds for the math and the careful strategy that it takes to be a competitive video game or whatever game player. And I can be one of the most enthusiastic fans of that and understand everything I need to understand about that without having the skill level that they have. And sometimes it's actually stronger to be like, I have so much respect and awe and excitement for that, partially because what I get out of the game is something different, like shiny hunting. Yeah. And I'm pretty good at that. Like I'm married to Nate Wants to Battle, who was the other performer of Just Beyond at Pokémon Worlds. Very skilled Pokemon player, has been for quite some time, did briefly play some competitive. And, we were both playing Scarlet Violet alongside each other. I was playing Scarlet, he played Violet. And I was able to observe like the difference in how I grind to get the shiny charm and grind to like collect them all, and catching them all is really my like highest goal. And his was more like train the best, strongest Pokemon to battle and et cetera, et cetera. So like, I guess that gave me some validation of like, that's what's so great about Pokemon is that so many people can find so many different things that they love in these spaces that can give them common ground with other people who maybe don't think the same way they do,
100%. It's you can take it as deep as you want to go with Pokemon. It's wonderful that it offers so many things to so many different people, and again, just so many pearls of wisdom coming out there. I think the idea that you're, I guess, in sort of actor speak, playing the objective of playing the awe and reverence that we have for these pro gamers. It's a fantastic insight into that. I know that we'll dive far more deeply into the hosting side of things. And just to go back to something you said earlier as well, thank you for sharing what you said about being a woman in the gaming space. And I'm glad you feel, well, we all are very glad that there have been steps in the right direction on that front. But can you expand on your feelings on that nowadays a little bit further?
Yeah. There's so much to say about that. Like you said, that's one of those things that we could absolutely do an entire podcast on. The nature of wanting to be included in a community, knowing you want, like, that you have a space, that people want you there, is so common, so human. We all have it. So I think that's the bedrock of what I'm talking about. And then on top of that, being someone who my entire career is talking about video games, knowing a lot about people who play video games professionally, creating exciting stories for people to watch about video games. And especially when I started, there was a lot of gatekeeping and a lot of rhetoric that was like, either you're only here because you were a model, and we don't respect anything you have to say about games because you're only here because of how you look, which couldn't be further from the truth. And the second was like, oh, that's nice that you're here, but you're just the host. I heard just the host so much in comparison to like the commentators or the pros. And the idea consistently was like, you're just here to talk, and that's not a real skill. And so I think that on one hand, I think the understanding of the host profession has improved a little bit, not very much. I think the perception of women in gaming as like attention-seeking eye candy has improved quite a bit. I think that there's like still a very long way to go, but I think in general that inclusiveness has improved quite a bit. And I think I have just gotten more comfortable being like, it's okay that you don't understand my profession. Like you can tell me I'm just a host, and I will understand that you don't know the level of academic preparation and extreme strategy and thought and practice that I've given to my particular role in these shows. And I guess I've gotten more comfortable being like, if it looks easy to you, that means I'm really good at it. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's like the image of the swan with the elegant, composed swan on top of the lake, but then the feet kicking really hard underneath.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Anna, and let's hope that things continue in that direction. Yeah, sorry.
I also just want to say, I started out in StarCraft Brood War way back. Did a lot of things in like StarCraft and Dota and a lot of other games that are dissimilar in a lot of ways from Pokemon and the Pokemon community. And I was doing that for about 5 years before I got involved in Pokemon. And so I want to be really clear that part of the reason that Pokemon has become such a priority for me and why I've made it so important to stick with Pokemon even as some of those other games fell away was that is where I found a community where a lot of those things were not a problem. Like I never got the rhetoric of like, you're a woman, so why are you here? I quite a few for the first couple years were like, she doesn't know anything about Pokemon. And that was a little rough to get through. But I saw a community where it was like older experienced players were helping younger experienced players and wanting to help them grow. And parents and like communities were supporting players reach for their dreams, which in other gaming communities, it was like, my parents don't understand. And they basically disowned me because I tried to become a pro StarCraft player or something, you know? So I just want to make clear that a lot of those struggles I had, the reason I gravitated toward Pokemon was because the community was so far ahead of those other places in terms of like inclusiveness and safety. And I also want to say that even because of, you know, even in spite of that, I've still felt a level of like insecurity, you know, of like wanting to belong, wanting to be affirmed that I belong. And I think that this year at Worlds was one of the first times that I just had irrefutable evidence that I was wanted. And that is something that like I can't express how precious that is.
Well, I think I speak on behalf of all of us when I say we're delighted to hear that you found that within Pokemon. And yeah, the reception that you received at the World Championships when you're up there on stage in the arena and everyone was just showering you with their love and support for everything that you've done over the past 10 years. It was a very emotional moment. I'm sure that we will talk more about that later on in the episode, but for now we're going to move on from there into talking about your university experience.
As you can tell, I was really into acting. I was really into singing. If left to my own devices, I would have gone to like a music school or an acting school. I would have gotten a degree in theater. But my parents were, I don't know if I would say insistent, but at least close, that they were like, do something that's a little bit more applicable, a little bit more reasonable, something like that you can get a job from. And this was coming from a place of care because they had some family members who, you know, had chosen a more performing arts path and had struggled to just like have stability in their life. So I appreciate that from them. I also look back on that and I'm like, I wish I had just trusted my gut because I knew even then that my calling was music and acting. but that was one of the first times that I was like, oh, maybe I can't believe in myself. Because through high school, I mean, like, I was singer of the year and I was soprano section leader, and it was like my whole identity. And then leaving high school and going into college, like the adult world, and being told like, oh yeah, that's cute. That's a hobby. That's not something you can do beyond this, you know, as an adult. I think that was one of the first times that I started being like, oh, that's unreasonable to think I'm good enough to do that. Or I need to focus on more adult, responsible, stable things. That said, though, I did the closest thing I possibly could. And I got a degree in speech communication and a degree in international studies with a minor in Spanish. So what a speech communication degree is, a lot of people maybe don't know, and there are quite a few communication degrees that are very different, but speech communication primarily focused on how we speak, the science of how we say things and what we say, the study of different types of communication, like interpersonal communication, how we relate to each other and build relationships, rhetoric, which is kind of how we present ideas and persuade each other of things, organizational communication, which is how we take a large group and organize it and make sure that the lines of communication are strong and effective, and even metaphor, which is something, if you really want to geek out about communication, is a really interesting thing to dive into. But so basically I majored in how to do the job that I'm doing now, how to speak in front of people confidently, how to think really fast about the underlying ideas that you're trying to convey and do so in a pleasing and effective way. And then I got the international studies degree because for a while I wanted to be a translator because I love languages and I love learning about other cultures. But I realized mostly that was because I liked helping people tell their stories. And the more I understood what different kinds of cultures and influences people had from around the world, the more effective I could be in helping to guide them in speaking their own mind and telling their own stories. So I did study abroad in Spain for quite a while, and I minored in Spanish, and I was the captain of the speech and debate team. I did the individual events, not the debate. So there were two sides of our team. One was the debate side, which is where you argue an idea, and individual events is where you did things like persuasive speaking, comedic speaking, impromptu speaking. So I was that captain because I preferred not to argue. I just like to talk. So the reason I like to bring that up is because I think it was the start of my kind of like, I will always just try to go one step closer to performing art, even when life requires that I do something different. And also because I think, like I said, I think my profession is misunderstood a lot of the time. And I think people don't realize that I wrote a thesis on what I do. This is a real academic area of study that it goes beyond just kind of like chit-chatting with a camera pointed at you. And I like to talk about that because I nerd out about it and I have a lot of joy in talking about communication theory. And also just because, it's something I want people to understand because I want that legacy to be left for people who come after me too. I want people to know that it's something that is an artisanal profession,
And I would love to geek out with you about the ins and outs of the thesis that you wrote. Again, that's something that we could spend an entire episode on. It sounds fascinating. Thank you so much for explaining that for all of us. Yeah, I mean, obviously we can understand where your parents are coming from when they encourage you not to go full pelt for the performing side of things. I think a lot of people listening and watching will identify with that, how that the first moment where you ever had to say, just sow that seed of doubt. But very pleased to see that now you've sort of been able to embrace everything that you have been able to. It sounds like you're the kind of person who all roads would have led to this point somehow eventually. But I mean, at this point, are you ultimately pleased with how the direction that your life has taken to get to where you are?
That's such a good question. I feel like right now where I'm at, and I know we're going to talk a lot about like what I'm doing now and how I got here later, but I know that I may not have ended up with the privileges I have now in terms of expressing myself and taking time to be creative and doing art if I hadn't taken a more quote unquote sensible career path that led me to be able to take some corporate jobs and to kind of do that that corporate full-time job thing to provide myself with the resources I need to then take more risks artistically. So I can't say that I regret it. And also, clearly, I love it. I love to talk about communication. I feel like I have kind of a superpower in understanding people and figuring out how to convey ideas. I love my degree. I love my area of study. So I can't look back and be like, I regret it. I can say that I think I wonder what it would have been like if I had just from the beginning been like, I'm a singer and I'm an actor, period. And that's what I do. I think that would have been a really interesting journey too. Not saying that it would have been better. But I like to wonder about it, and I like to let that inform the choices I make now and the advice I give other people. Because there's no way of knowing, I wouldn't say I regret it, but I wonder about it.
There's no way of knowing, but I think wondering, as you say, is an entirely healthy thing to do. And who knows, we're looking at your life story in retrospect here, but of course it continues, and who knows what gates may open that wouldn't have done otherwise since you have taken the path that you have. So thank you for that, Anna.
Yeah.
And now it's time to introduce Pokemon 3 on your dream team alongside Eevee and Alolan Executor.
Okay, the next one's Stretchy Tatsugiri.
Okay.
As I was making this list, I was like very much surprising myself with the Pokemon that came to mind. The reason for that one is something that people who have watched the Pokemon World Championships series might be familiar with, is that I like to do Pokebounds with my outfits that I use to host. Usually what I do is for the national championships, I do Pokemon themed outfits, and for Worlds, I do trainer themed outfits. And I think it was in 2023, I can't remember, a couple years back, I was putting together outfits for Pokebounds for NEIC, and one of mine was Stretchy Tatsugiri. Oh, it was because I decided on a theme that was like dragon type Pokemon that don't look like dragons. So I did Alolan Executor as well, but I did Stretchy Tatsugiri, and I just wore this like extremely blousy, big yellow jumpsuit with white shoes for the rice, and I had a little necklace that had a goldfish in a plastic bag, was the little charm on it. But I usually take like very nice posed pictures in my outfits, and I want to present and be kind of have this persona. But one thing that I've learned about myself over these many, many years in hosting is, because of where I'm coming from with a communication degree and that kind of overly scientific way I think about it, and even experiences that we'll talk about with like pageantry and speech team and all of that, I tend to present a little more formal than I feel. I feel a lot goofier and weirder than I present. And some jobs that I really wanted as a host that I didn't get, I would reach out and be like, hey, I totally understand you in another direction, but I just want to be the kind of person that you would hire next time. So can you give me any feedback? And a couple of times people are like, oh, it's just because like your persona is a lot more formal and we wanted someone a little bit more raw or a little more funny or a little more goofy. And I was like, but I feel like I'm that person. So how do I access her? Like, how do I bring her out? So all this is to say, I took a picture as Stretchy Tatsugiri by like laying on the TCG table on the stage and like just making a really weird Stretchy Tatsugiri pose and face. And at the time, that was a little bit of a stretch for me because I was like, is this too weird? Are people gonna like think it's stupid? And people loved it. It was like one of people's favorite things, and I've kind of become like associated with Stretchy Tatsugiri now. Someone even at PACT gave me a cute little Stretchy Tatsugiri like model because that was their favorite. And that was a really touchstone moment in affirming my current content strategy, which is like, is this stupid in a way that I like? Awesome, I will do it. And that has brought me a lot of joy and actually a lot more success than kind of trying to be this perfect image of what a host is supposed to be.
I would hazard a guess that no one in the world would have as profound a story behind Stretchy Tatsugiri as you do. That is absolutely fascinating to hear. I also love, I don't know if this was intentional or not, but you said when you were talking about posting that picture online, is this a bit of a stretch? Which was just the perfect...
I didn't even think about that.
There you go. The puns flying left, right, and centre. We'll be talking about puns later as well. One of the questions that came in. But
Good.
Stretchy Tatsugiri, wow. Okay. Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, you have 10 years of experience hosting the Pokémon World Championships, and I have a few years of experience at this point with casting. But I think at some point, I guess it would come to all of us that recognizing people are watching you because of you. And just the personality. Sometimes we sort of take for granted just how much just being yourself on camera brings, and how much it adds flavour to everything you're doing. But it's fantastic that now you're embracing that side of things, and it seems like that, is opening far more doors for you.
I'm trying to embrace it. I don't want to give the idea that that's coming easily. I think that almost all of us who are on the internet are constantly in a state of like, will you accept me? Do you like me for who I am? What if I show who I really am and no one likes it? I don't want to give the impression that I've ascended that at all. I think that I battle that constantly. The feeling of like wanting to be wanted, wanting to be chosen, wanting to be accepted. But I will say that showing up in a way that feels authentically me and then having people enjoy that or celebrate that is one of the best ways that I've gotten closer to feeling that authenticity and that belonging.
Wonderful. Well, words that we can all learn a lot from. Thank you for that, Anna. And Stretchy Tatsugiri, welcome to the Dream Team. And now we will order up from there a serving of your winding job trajectory and that one step closer rule.
So I have had the weirdest job trajectory. Not the weirdest ever. I'm sure someone out there has weirder. But when people ask me like, oh, how did you get this job? How did you end up here? I'm not the right person to ask because my choices have been so weird and they just kind of happened to work for me. But I started working when I was 15. I was a lifeguard and a swim instructor. I eventually became a swim coach and a lead instructor. Then I was... right after I graduated from school, actually, because I had been doing that for 9 years at that point, I was asked to consult on opening a water park in Dubai. So I was sent overseas for 3 months to help open a water park called the Palm Jumeirah, the Atlantis the Palm, which is on that island that's shaped like a palm tree. So I have crazy, crazy stories to tell about living in Dubai and being in that kind of strange profession. And then I came back and then I was like, I need a real big girl job. So I started working at a Fortune 500 finance company with my degree as a recruiter. And then as I was working as a recruiter, and I had kind of been like, all right, I've been bouncing all over and like, what do I actually want? Again, that was another touch point where I was like, at my core, I'm a performer and I want to use that gift. I feel the most cosmically connected and in a flow state when I'm performing. And I think that means that I have something to offer people, whether that's a sense of belonging or joy or entertainment or whatever. And so I made a rule while I was working there that I called the one step closer rule, which is like from here on, I will only take the next job if it's one step closer to my dream job. And I was like, okay, what's my dream job? I guess it would be like, I'm a film and Broadway actress and singer who's also a Goodwill ambassador for the UN. And I don't have any thought that I will actually end up being that. In fact, that sounds like it would actually be a horrible life. You'd be so busy. But if that's the dream and I take one step closer to that, that's also going to be a really cool job. And if I get like 10 steps closer to that, that's going to be a really cool job. So at that time, I had just started getting involved in esports on kind of a hobby level. I met In Control, who ended up becoming my husband at one point, who was a professional StarCraft player. And I went to some tournaments with him and with his team, Evil Geniuses. And I was like, hey, I think people want to hear about these pro gamers. Can I take that microphone and stand next to them and interview them? And you can put those on your YouTube and see if people like it. And that was relatively new thing at that time to actually talk to pro gamers instead of just like downloading their VODs and watching them. And I had, like I said, just graduated from school, and I was really down to just like have wild stories. So someone gave me a flyer for Miss Portland pageant and was like, you sing, you perform, you should do this pageant thing. And I was like, lol, hilarious. No, but also that could be a really funny story, and I could learn a lot of really fun things about a community that I've never had any connection with before. So I kind of did it as a joke, to be honest. And then found like all of these super compelling, amazing community-oriented women who, like, I walked in and they were like, oh, honey, let us help you, and like taught me how to walk and like gave me a dress because mine was so god-awful, and like, you know, really came around me and supported me to the point that I won Miss Portland as a huge surprise. And so then was part of doing appearances as like an instant mini celebrity kind of. And all that is to say, at a certain point in my finance job, I was like, okay, I am either going to, at this point I had become Miss Oregon USA. I'm either going to win Miss USA and I'm going to move to New York and I'm going to become Miss USA and do that crazy job, or I have an opportunity to work with Team Evil Geniuses as, at least at the time, what I thought would be kind of an on-camera personality and media producer. So either I'm going to move to New York and be Miss USA, or I'm going to move to Arizona and I'm going to live in a pro gaming house. In fact, the first North American pro gaming house that anyone has, at least that we were aware of. And I'm going to work with this pro StarCraft team, and I'm going to do that for like $1,000 a month and see what happens. Two completely crazy ideas. So I didn't win Miss USA. Great. Moved to Arizona. Learned that the person who had hired me had given me a different idea of what things were going to be like than the person who actually owned the team and was my boss. So then embarked on a whole journey of basically being like the facility operations manager. And then in my free time being like, but look, if we make content and put it on YouTube, people will be interested in our team. And what if I stand in front of the camera and do that? So eventually Team Evil Geniuses developed a pretty robust media offering, became Team Evil Geniuses and Alliance, and then became Good Game Agency, which was a media agency that owned pro gaming teams, which was then acquired by Twitch. And at Twitch, Evil Geniuses was kind of, well, Good Game Agency was kind of like, we don't really have a spot for you anymore, which we could talk about that for a long time as well. But then I got taken onto DJ Wheat's team, Twitch Studios, and worked there for like 5 years, became the lead producer of Twitch Studios. And during all this time from Evil Geniuses to then, I was also hosting video game tournaments. So either being like the interviewer, the sideline reporter, the MC, whatever they would have me do on camera for like MLG, NASL, IGN Pro League, just everything, to the point where like most weekends I would leave work early on Friday, fly somewhere, host a video game tournament, and then come back like Monday morning and go straight to work at Twitch, which I loved. Now I don't know how I had that energy, but back then I loved it. Yeah. So as I was writing this talking point, I was like, the amount there is to say about all of these stages, I don't even know how I can reasonably bring all of them up in a way that is compelling, but that is my best overview of how I ended up at Twitch, which then gave me even more room to become the kind of like 3-job person that I was, where I was working full-time for Twitch, I was hosting video game tournaments on the weekends, and I was also streaming most of the time after work, and running a small stream team called Misclicks at the same time. So that was the critical mass of my career at that point.
I am this close to saying, should we just do a 10-hour recording? I mean, should we just throw caution to the wind? Let's just dive right in.
Sorry, I really like to talk.
We love it. It's fascinating to hear. And I mean, have you considered also playing yourself in the movie of your life? Because there's a whole lot of material here. I'm
ready. Anyone out there, any director, let me know. I'm here.
Fantastic. I'll play your dog. Now, so I think a big question that's coming out of this for me is, it seems like in the story you've told us so far, that the gaming side of things has just sort of roared into action from being pretty dormant for a little while. So was it still rumbling along during, I mean, you were playing the Wii, for example, at university, but did you find yourself leaning more into it? What was the genesis?
Absolutely.
Of it, essentially?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was gaming a lot in college and then became connected to that StarCraft Brood War scene and learned about these online communities that had spawned when we really didn't have the infrastructure for those communities. Like, we didn't have Discord, we didn't have Twitch even, we didn't have Justin TV even. Like, we didn't have infrastructure. It was like people were downloading VODs and then they would be on like TeamSpeak or whatever, what was it, Ventrilo? I don't know. So I got to know a lot of pro gamers just from listening to their voice as I watched people play StarCraft Brood War. And I think the most inciting incident where I was like, this is a community that I really want to continue to invest in, I think that there's so much here, was I was on Team Liquid, which is, in case people aren't super old esports people like me, was a forum where we did a lot of discussing StarCraft and also just talking about tons of other things as gamers. And I was like wowed by the problems that this community could solve and the good that they could do in the world. So at one point I posted on my own profile that like, hey, I'm raising money for Children's Miracle Network. My goal is like $350. Here's the website that it's on. It was actually connected to pageantry. And I was like, if anyone wants to participate, I think it's a really good charity. And like, you know, you can go to this website and you can donate. I posted that and they crashed the site within 5 minutes of just people being like, yeah, I want to help. That's a good thing. And this was even before social media was the way it is now. So organizing people online around a thing was a lot harder back then. And getting to see this group of like extremely strategically minded, smart, community-oriented people from so many different corners of the world rally around a very simple thing that did good was like, oh, this is important. Like, this is a really good place to be. And underneath all that is just, we all like playing video games. We all like talking about video games, and that brings us joy, and that's why we hang out together, and that's enough to make us have something in common and to make us care about each other. Like, that was crazy. So that was really, I think, what made things roar to life, so to speak, where I went from like, I like video games and I play video games and I enjoy them, to I identify as a gamer and I am part of the gaming community and I see us as working together toward goals that I believe in, like making space for play in the world, and that play brings good to the world, and that because we identify together over things we love and positivity, we can make positive change in the world. And this thing brings us together in person to meet people that we never ever would have met or have anything in common with, and helps me learn about different cultures. And so I think that's what started me being like, I want to continue to identify with this community and to contribute to it from now on.
You're so right. It's, I mean, the kindest community I could possibly imagine. I think we're all very privileged to be a part of the gaming space, and it's wonderful that is what made you tip over the edge into leaning so far into what you're doing now. So thank you for that, Anna. And now it's time to introduce Pokemon number 4 on your dream team, alongside Eevee, Alolan Executor, and Stretchy Tatsugiri.
People are going to look at this team and be like, what? The next one on the team is Gyarados. particularly, especially for me, shiny Gyarados. The reason for that is that was one of my big shiny chases in Arceus. It took me forever to find a freaking shiny Magikarp. And I guess the reason I like Gyarados and Magikarp in general is the story of having like basically a worthless Pokemon that you just have to kind of take care of and help for so long until it finally blossoms into this like very exciting, very powerful, very cool looking, very intimidating Pokemon. I guess I just like that idea of having to like really believe in something and really work on something in a quiet way so that eventually it becomes something really shiny and impressive. I had to work really hard to find that shiny. And I think that's something that even as I prepared for Worlds this year and other things in life where I've been like, whenever I don't feel the most talented or the most impressive, or whenever I am afraid I'm not good enough, what I know I can do is put in the time and the work and the belief, and that eventually pays off in one way or another. So aside from just being like, this was a cool shiny I had, it also it inspires me, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so well put, and it connects so strongly with your story. And for anyone unfamiliar, shiny Pokemon just vanishingly rare, alternately coloured variants of Pokemon that sparkle on encounter, and so they're highly prized for that rarity. Red Gyarados, shiny Gyarados, welcome to Anna's Dream Team. Now it's time to talk about being a pro Dungeons & Dragons player, which changed how you saw and talked to yourself, in your own words.
Yeah, so I was working at Twitch, like I said, full-time. I was hosting video game tournaments, arguably also full-time. I was streaming, and I was running this stream team called Misclicks, the goal of which was to just make some women more visible in streaming. And specifically, the first show that we put on Misclicks was a live Dungeons & Dragons show. And I had never played Dungeons & Dragons before we did that show. So my first experience playing D&D was live on stream on Misclicks. And I got excited about D&D because I watched Roleplay, which was one of the other first D&D shows on Twitch. And I was like, this is just improv. Like, this is acting. You get to act and play a game at the same time. And I get to stream, which is something I know how to do. And I love doing, and I get to do acting and gaming at the same time. Like, this is the ideal. So I started doing that fairly early in the evolution of live stream Dungeons and Dragons. And so then when Dungeons and Dragons itself started their own Twitch channel, they came to me and they were like, you've been doing this for a while and you work for Twitch, so you know how to advise us. Can you join us on our official D&D show called Dice Camera Action, which is going to be dungeon mastered by Chris Perkins, who is the narrative designer of Dungeons and Dragons. So literally the guy who wrote it. And I was like, absolutely, I will. So I played on that show for, how many years was it? I don't know. We did 130 some episodes, so it was quite some time. And being DM'd by a master storyteller like Chris Perkins, to begin with, is such a compelling human experience when you're someone who finds a lot of meaning in storytelling. And then on top of that, D&D gives you the opportunity to put someone who isn't you in situations and observe how they handle it and compare that to how you would handle it. And then insert yourself or take yourself away from that experience, however makes sense. And my character was someone who, she was a paladin. Her name's Evelyn. I've been playing her now for 10 years in various shows. But her whole shtick was that she was fatally optimistic, meaning like she was so sure it was going to turn out okay that she kind of got herself in trouble a lot of the time. And also that she was raised as a paladin. Like she was taken from her family at like 6 years old, went to paladin school, and had immense love for her god Lathander, but also felt under the surface, of course, very kind of like felt a sense of loss. You know, she had never gotten to have a normal childhood. She'd never gotten to have a normal family. She yearned to be like wanted for being who she was, and found most of her worth in just being a good servant of this god. And at the time, I had no idea these were themes that I needed to explore in my own life. And I will say, a lot of times people are like, D&D characters are just an extension of the person, and now I know so much about the person because I know about their D&D character. No, that's not what I mean. But I do think that there were times where I realized that my perfectionism or my fear of not being accepted or my disconnection from my own feelings was so apparent in this character that when my DM, who is very perceptive, would ask her questions, it would make me ask questions about my life. Like there was some time where she showed up and she saw her god, and she was like, "Whoa, I want to serve you. What should I do better?" And the god was like, "Well, what do you want? I want you to live a good life. I want to see what you want. I want you to live a fulfilling life." And I kind of realized I had lost track of what I wanted and what fulfillment for my life meant. So that was one of those turning points that really changed my life, of like allowing to myself to be fully immersed in a story from the perspective of someone who was not me, and then getting to watch that and be like, oh, I need to learn from that too. And that happened a lot of times in a lot of different ways, bigger and smaller. And then since then, I've continued to be a professional D&D player. That show eventually, sadly, got canceled, but Evelyn got picked up to be in another show called Acquisitions Incorporated, which is part of Penny Arcade, of the Penny Arcade Expo. And so we do live stage shows every so often, every time there's a PAX. And I produce a D&D show now called Stones Throw Cities Beneath, where it's almost a little bit of like a spiritual successor to Dice Camera Action. So a lot of the lore that came out of that we're playing now. And it has made me so passionate about the power of like massively multiplayer storytelling, of like a community coming together around the single goal of telling a really good story. There's a lot I have to say about that. And that has changed how I think about the impact of stories on human life. So it changed my life in the sense that it gave me a niche of being one of the most experienced producers of live Dungeons and Dragons gameplay out there. And also in a way that's much more familiar to people who play D&D, it really helped me to learn more about the human condition and myself by extension.
Absolutely fascinating. I guess the first question here is just to briefly clear up for anyone unfamiliar what a paladin is.
A paladin is a D&D class. So D&D classes are like how you show up and interact with the rules. A paladin is technically a magic user, but also has some fighter elements. They get their power from a deity, from worshiping a deity. And so their spell casting comes from charisma, meaning the way that they show up in the world, the way they speak, the way they perform, and the connection they have with this deity is how their magic appears. And if they lose that connection with their deity, their magic disappears.
I see. Okay. Thank you very much for that. Yeah, as you say, all of these things might sound far removed from the nuts and bolts world that we live in here, but they're all just sort of variations on a theme. The fact that you're able to learn so much more about yourself through doing it, and I sympathize with that through acting and improvising. But I've never tried Dungeons and Dragons, but there's no stronger advert for me to give it a go, and I'm sure for everyone watching and listening, than what you said just then. So obviously you've got a decade of experience doing Dungeons and Dragons. Do you still sort of, at times where you're feeling like, I don't know, what do I want out of life? How am I feeling right now? Do you find yourself almost sort of subconsciously accessing that, asking yourself questions like a dungeon master would?
Yeah. It's made me, I feel like it reignited my imagination, first of all. Just gave me back that kind of like, when you're a kid and you're like playing with action figures or dolls and you can just tell a whole story, and as an adult you you almost forget how to do that. So I think it reignited that in a way that has been really helpful for me. It also, like, in D&D you make a lot of bad choices. Like, you make choices that were the wrong choice, or that maybe we're just a little suboptimal, and getting used to just making a decision and seeing what happens in D&D, that was a huge change for me too, because I think I'm always trying to plan, like, what are all the possible outcomes of this decision, and what if this isn't the absolute right answer, and getting to see that, like, it's probably not the absolute right answer, and whatever happens afterward will be a cool story anyway. I feel like I talk to myself about that a lot. And the current D&D character that I'm playing is like a super weirdo kid. And that kind of goes with what I was talking to you about with Stretchy Tatsugiri, where it's like, I really want to access that weird, goofy part of myself and just show up as that more. And so that's been really cool too, just like sitting in and embodying that weirdness.
Yeah, well, let that be a message to all of us. Let's just embrace who we feel we truly are. Well, wonderful. Now it's time to discover what's going to be Pokemon number 5 on your dream team, alongside Eevee, Alolan Exeggutor, Stretchy Tatsugiri, and Red Shiny Gyarados.
I couldn't have planned this better. I didn't even think about where these would show up in the show. But Evelyn, my character, is also a notorious horse girl. Grew up on a horse ranch, has a shiny horse named Morning Glory. The next Pokemon is Galarian Ponyta, because so cute, so horsey, so rainbow, so unicorn. Nothing wrong with her. Everything perfect. Want her to be my best friend.
Yeah, well, we can manifest that. We can try and manifest. I'm sure Galarian Ponyta, right, rather than Rapidash.
Yeah, Ponyta. I mean, both are awesome, but Ponyta's so cute. She's so cute.
No, understandable. So the sense I'm getting is the Galarian Ponyta was just a, like, see it, love at first sight, you're one of my favorites, next sort of thing.
I mean, the meaning behind it is, like, sometimes I add too much meaning to things. And like I said, I have a metaphor and a meaning for even Stretchy Tatsugiri and Gyarados and all that. And sometimes it's important to remember, like, this sparks joy, period, the end. Yep. There's a lot of also, like, you know, there's some deep horse girl tendencies in me. My dad and I used to horseback ride together, and that was really special. And it really speaks to, like, the dork in me too. So there's some underlying reasons, but mostly just, like, very cute, very much like, thank you, yes, please.
Yeah, good. Well, let's honour that with the moving swiftly on that it deserves, and now move into your retirement from Twitch, and then your focus on music and performing arts.
So Twitch was acquired by Amazon. I was like employee 235 or so at Twitch. And then by the time I started thinking about moving on, there were like 3,000 employees. So a lot had changed for Twitch. It didn't quite have the same startup feel. And some of the ways that business had started to have to be done ended up, just because of the department I was in and the way that things worked for us, it ended up becoming pretty toxic. So I was already kind of like having some thoughts about what I would do next or how I could change what I was doing at Twitch. And then I was separated from my husband at the time in Control, Jeff Robinson, and he passed away very suddenly. So going through a separation to begin with, and then also very suddenly being confronted with the death of a fairly young, healthy person, really just shakes you. I mean, in all senses possible. And so partially for mental health reasons, because I just needed a break and I needed to recalibrate. Partially because it really made me step back and look at my life and be like, okay, what about this one step closer rule? Like, how close have I actually gotten? How much have I really believed in myself? Or how, like, if I knew I only had a year left to get one step closer, what would I do? So for all those reasons, I decided I was going to at least partially retire. I was going to step back from Twitch. And I, at the time, I was doing enough hosting that could be my full-time job. And I had been doing hosting for about 10 years at that point. And I had always been like, as soon as I really feel like it's stable, like as soon as I really feel like it can support me for sure, then I'll make the leap to full-time performance and I'll leave kind of the other administrative production, corporate stuff behind. And so I was like, you know what? I've been waiting long enough. I've worked hard enough. I've put in my Magikarp time. It's time to become Gyarados. So March 20th, 2020 was my last day at Twitch. And the next day we went into lockdown for COVID. And almost overnight, most of my hosting opportunities were completely gone. Most of them never came back. So I really had to buckle down and believe that it was still the right choice to be like, all right, sure. The gaming stuff maybe isn't going to support me the same way I thought it was. But the reason I'm here is because I am not close enough to being an actor and a singer and songwriter and artist as I want to be. And if I only had a little time left, that would be what's important to me. So I went back to school for a little while. I took some piano, music theory, and songwriting classes because I felt like my knowledge there didn't match my passion. I started taking acting classes to beef up what I knew about improv and theater acting to add more like film and on-camera acting. And I think the way that I've always felt more comfortable stepping into things is like with the most knowledge and study I possibly can. So I spent a little while building that and then started stepping out, doing auditions like we talked about. And man, the music thing was the stickiest. Like I said, around college was the first time I started being like, oh, maybe I'm not good enough. Maybe like I just was a hobbyist. Like I was a high school singer. Like that doesn't mean anything. And along the way, I had believed a lot of the wrong people about like how skilled I was or how desirable I was as a collaborator or how much skill I had. And so breaking through that kind of insecurity or those habits of like hiding my art because I was worried it wasn't good enough. It took years. It took like 3 years. And so just recently, I finally gotten to the point where I'm like, I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to record a song myself. I finally learned how to use a digital audio workspace on my computer, which is, you know, how you can digitally create like a song and instruments and all of that and record. And I've released a little bit of music here and there as collaborations, and I've been in a few feature films, and I booked a couple musicals this year. So I'm going to be in a Christmas musical and a winter musical. So I feel like that story is still very much in the telling, but I am finally to the point where when someone asks me who I am, what I do, I say I'm an actor and a vocalist. And I really believe that if you keep saying it, it will become true. and on some level, it is true. So when Pokémon Worlds came up, actually a few years ago, I told the story on a video on my social media, so I'm kind of repeating myself if people have seen that. But I had always, as the host of Pokemon, heard the music of Pokemon and been like, oh man, I wish I was the kind of person that could find out how to like audition for those songs. Like I wish I could sing those, specifically Nashville. There was a song I really liked in 2019, I think. And I was like, someday I wish that would just happen. And then I realized like, you have the ability to ask about this. You know, you can reach out. And so in 2023, there was a bit in the script where I had to sing on stage as though something was stuck in my head. It wasn't supposed to be like, you're a great singer. It was just like, oh yeah, that song rocked. It's stuck in my head. And the producers, after I did that, were like, oh, your voice is good. Like you can actually sing. And I was like, yes, I can. Would you please tell me how I may audition to sing more in the future? Like, please. Also, my husband is a musician and we have a music studio in our house. Can we please make music for you? Please, please, please. I will follow up with you 1,000,000 times about it. This is my shot. And they were like, sure, that sounds great. So it took a couple years of talking about it and figuring out where I could belong in the musical performances of Pokemon. But this year I got to sing Just Beyond, and that was not only on the soundtrack, but we got to perform it in the opening ceremonies. So I got to sing and dance, which is another one of my passions that I didn't even talk about this whole time. So clearly, like, still bringing that to the forefront as something that I call myself. But singing and dancing, getting lifted into the air, and then getting to start hosting from the air at Pokemon Worlds. Really, like, I rarely say anything was the most anything in my life, because it's really hard for me to pick favorites or to like commit to that kind of favorite. But absolutely, that was the most fun performance of my entire life. I felt the most connected to like my calling, and it really felt like I had this moment backstage where I was like, the one step closer rule worked. Like, this is the cool job that I was like, if I get 10 steps closer, that will be a cool job. This is the 10 steps closer. And it really felt like a touchstone moment. Not that like I've made it and I'm done, but this like, okay, that strategy is working and I need to keep putting my head down and really putting in the work to keep taking steps closer. You know what I mean?
Oh, so inspiring. Yeah, no, I hope a lot of people are taking away the one step closer rule from this. Now, to hear everything that went into that moment, the years and years of hard work, and the fact that you really felt as connected, more connected than you ever have to everything you've been striving towards, that's so wonderful to hear. Well, first of all, incredibly sorry to hear, of course, what happened to your ex-husband, and I cannot imagine the turmoil and the turbulence of feelings that must have been raging. The fact that you took a step back, I mean, very pleased to hear that you did that, and seems like it at least gave you the opportunity to emerge sort of more aligned to the goals that you had always had in mind for yourself. So I guess my question at this point is, now, having had that incredible experience at Worlds and having felt that flow state, as you called it, I mean, how does it feel for you now?
It feels so good. The emotional landscape I find myself in now is absolutely treasuring that experience alongside the community experience I had at Worlds. You mentioned briefly, I also got to give like a few lines of my own addition to the script at the end during closing ceremonies, and I cried, and a few audience members cried with me, and it just, like I said, I felt so accepted and loved and wanted. So just that, and as something that I, like, the amount of work I put into that performance was months of like singing on my elliptical and taking extra voice lessons and doing physically a lot to take care of my voice to get it strong enough and stuff. So like the culmination of all that work being that performance is something that I'm like really proud of and I'm treasuring. I'm battling the post-event blues that we all know about, where it's like when you put that much work into a mountaintop experience and then it's over, you really have to grapple with like the come down. And when you're in a freelance profession like mine, I never know if Pokemon's going to bring me back the next year. Like there's a good chance, you know, and everyone talks about it, but I've had enough experiences in this profession that you just never count on it until you're actually invited and you're actually contracted. And then having the addition of Pokemon XP, which is so exciting. And I feel like there are so many places I'd love to get involved in that. That the kind of immediately going from like, this was a mountaintop performance to like, I really want to do that again. Oh no, what if they don't let me do that again? It's like, I'm really trying to have a healthy perspective on that, about thinking, you know, how do I continue the hard work I'm doing regardless of whatever happens next? And how do I make myself really available and contribute to the community in a way where regardless of what happens next year, I can show up and contribute? And how do I not live in fear or an idea of scarcity, but live in an idea of like plenty and of celebration? So to be completely honest, that's the hard work I'm doing right now, is making sure I keep my head right. And then also, honestly, the confidence boost I got as a vocalist from that has really, really helped. I'm already making more music. So the call to action for everyone listening is, please follow me on Spotify or wherever you get your music, because my plan is to release a lot more music this year and hopefully show up as not just like a host who also can sing, but really a vocalist who's providing you with music that you like, that you want to hear more of.
That's so exciting. I will be following you on Spotify right after we are done recording. Very exciting times indeed. Cannot wait to hear more of your music. And I believe, in the words of someone in the crowd in that seminal moment in the arena on Championship Sunday, we love you, Anna. Cue a massive roar of applause from the crowd.
I'll cry every time. Oh, it was so amazing.
Long may it continue. The atmosphere in that arena was, at that moment and so many more during Championship Sunday was just totally intangible. And also very exciting about your musical appearances later this year, so all the very best for those. And for anyone unfamiliar, Pokemon XP, yes, has been announced for the San Francisco 2026 Pokemon World Championships next year. Still awaiting further details about that, but more of a fan-centric experience, it seems, rather than the competitive-centric experience that the World Championships itself is, but both happening in San Francisco at the same time. Sort of thing, but await further details. But now, Anna, it's time to round out this dream team, so who's going to be Pokemon number 6?
This is like so cheesy, but I got to perform with my partner, my husband, Nate Wants to Battle, in the opening ceremony, and he has been a huge part of helping me become the performer with the confidence that I have today. He's just an incredible supportive partner and is such an inspiring artist and musician. So I picked his favorite Pokemon, which is Zoroark. Such a cute little emo boy.
Seems like a perfect way to
not
round
Nate,
out
but both also. Yeah.
Yeah. Seems like a perfect way to round out the dream team and bring it back to. It's almost sort of in a way giving back to someone you met through the community that has meant so much to you. So I mean, I realise you say it's Nate's favorite Pokemon. Is there anything more to explain there about how it ties in with your team? Maybe why Nate identifies with it and therefore why you do?
Well, like I said, he's like a little shadowy emo boy. I think if you want to give it a little more meaning, I tend to be like a Galarian Ponyta kind of girl. Pretty, rainbow, fun, cute. And so I probably would never have noticed Zoroark. Not never have noticed, but like it definitely wouldn't have been something where I'm like, ooh, that one. But because it speaks to Nate and that shadowiness and that kind of like, the dark broody boy energy speaks to him. It opened my eyes to being a little more excited about that. And now a lot of often Umbreon is my favorite evolution because of that dark broody, moonlight kind of feeling. And I guess what I would say about it is I think Zoroark's super cute now too. And when you get to look through the perspective of someone you love who has a really different way of looking at the world, I think that it helps you become a more expansive human, a more compassionate human, and to have more fun. So I guess if you want to give that extra meaning, that's what I would give it, is I'm really thankful for the perspectives of people I love making me see the world more expansively.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about how different Eevee and Alolan Executor were at the start of the episode, but Eevee and Zoroark, it's Galarian Ponyta and Zoroark, sorry, also contrast each other so massively, even in the colours in their designs, and I think that's a wonderful point to round out your team on, how just embracing the Pokemon that we might not necessarily notice and, substitute the word Pokemon there for anything you may choose, just to broaden our worldview, so to speak. So wonderful. This means, Anna, that your complete dream team is Eevee, Alolan Executor, Stretchy Tatsugiri, Shiny Gyarados, Galarian Ponyta, and Zoroark. So
your team.
It's a fantastic team. I really love it. I think there's so much diversity in designs here, also in types. I guess we have a couple of dragons with Alolan Executor and Tatsugiri.
I like dragons.
Which, by the way, you couldn't have picked a bigger contrast in biggest meets smallest dragon types. So, but you've just explained them all so well, and whether we're attaching more meaning than there really is or not, the fact remains that it's a team that represents you so perfectly. And so now I have to put you on the spot here and ask you, which of these Pokemon would you choose to be your partner Pokemon, in the manner of Ash and Pikachu, etc.?
I mean, it's so basic to say Eevee, but I just absolutely would pick Eevee.
Yeah.
I showed you my real life Eevee just a second ago. And on my trainer card, the one I made for Worlds, I made a little trainer card and it was Nizki, my little dog, as Eevee. So any of the other ones I would pick to sound more interesting would just be a lie. So it's Eevee.
Now you mention it, of course, I have that trainer card from you. We did a swap. I gave you a sticker for this very podcast, and you gave me that trainer card. Wonderful. And now I've met your dog in the flesh. Well, incredible.
Yes.
Eevee. And I think secretly I was hoping that you would save you, because it was, so to speak, your gateway Pokemon, the one that really just meant that you were able to embark on this whole adventure. And here you and I, having presented the Pokémon World Championships for the past 10 years. I mean, I guess that's something that we haven't talked about so much, all of your experience hosting the World Championships. Just to discuss that topic in a little bit more detail, I guess. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that journey?
Sure.
The fact, especially that it's been 10 years, that seminal moment.
It's been 10 years, and also the production team that's backstage at Pokemon Worlds, they're called Paperlight, and I've been working with them even, I want to say 4 years before Pokemon. So when I showed up to my first Pokemon World Championship, I was like, oh, hey guys, like, we all know each other. We've all been in the trenches together. So a lot of how I think about these 10 years at Pokemon, I just feel this profound sense of wonderment and gratefulness, because so many things have happened in my life during that time, and so much about me has changed. And Pokemon Worlds has become such a check-in point of looking back over a year and being like, who am I now versus who I was then? What am I dealing with now that I need a community around me for? Some of the most difficult, scary moments in my life happened while I was backstage at Pokemon, and that crew was able to come around me and like help me still do my job and take care of me and protect me while I was dealing with stuff that I could not show on stage. And I think that that's a very unique and valuable experience to have had in this business, especially. And so that's really cool, and getting to see a lot of them thriving now, and even like having kids, and Bryce, who's the executive producer of Pokemon, having kind of like come up through the ranks to be managing the whole thing and having these amazing ideas. Like a lot of the music is thanks to him, and the way he puts together every show just makes it even more and more exciting for everyone. So the first shout out I would want to give is to that backstage crew that nobody ever sees.
Yeah.
Because the passion they have, the care they have, the big hearts they have, and the just hard work that they put in, like the long hours that they put in every Pokemon. I want to give them a shout out. And then the journey in front of the stage, so to speak. I mentioned before that some of my job as an esports entertainer, performer, interviewer, speaker, a lot of the time is kind of like defending the choice to become a pro gamer. Like, what do you want to tell your parents now that you've won and they didn't believe in you? You know, I don't have to tell that story at Pokemon, because people are there because they're excited to cheer their kids on, and the older kids are helping the younger kids because they're acting out the behavior they were shown by their predecessors, so to speak. And I've gotten to watch a lot of people grow up, like Wolfie Glick was one of my first world champions that I ever interviewed, and getting to check in with him every year. And like, I think he was 18 or 19 when he won that worlds. And now, 10 years later, certainly like further into adulthood, and someone I love checking in with and hearing about his life, and watching him make a place professionally in this world of gaming also is really cool. And same with plenty of other people. But I take the honor of those moments on stage very seriously, of like, this is the moment where this one person gets to tell their Pokemon story, or gets to give their advice to people who want to grow up and be like them. I am so honored to be kind of the steward of those moments, and getting to look back on 10 years of doing that. I don't think I have the proper words to fully express my like gratefulness and humility in being able to do that for so long. And I hope I keep doing it forever. I mean, like, I hope I'm gray and have a walker and I'm still hobbling out on stage and asking how someone feels after winning the world championship.
I was about to say we hope you do too. I don't necessarily mean we hope that you're old and grey with a walker necessarily, but we hope that you're still there at the age when that might happen. And I think, the great irony in some ways of having this conversation on a podcast is that being at a loss for words speaks louder than sometimes when we have exactly the right words to say, because some experiences you can't really just synthesize in the words that we have. The perspective that you have having done this job for so long, and Wolf Glick, also someone I've had on this podcast, so that episode will be linked in the description below if you would like to check that out, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing that, Anna. Thank you so much as well for that heartfelt shout out to the backstage team, Paperlight, because they really are the unsung heroes of the production crew of any broadcast like this is. I mean, just think of when you take a moment to sit down and think about the logistics that must have gone into, say, the Pokémon World Championships 2025, going into the arena, of course, but then also just how the stage was laid out and the timing, especially with the orchestra there as well in the arena on the Sunday, as well as the lighting changes, the sound changes, etc., making sure everyone was on stage where they need to be. It's obviously a massive multi-person operation, and so thank you to Paperlight, thank you to CSL, for example, as well, who handled the EU regional streams, and thank you to all production crews behind some of these incredible broadcasts, because they simply would not happen without them. So thank you very much for providing that, Anna. So that is a very long-winded way of saying, Evie, you are Anna's partner Pokemon. And now a totally different kind of question for you, Anna, which is, if you were a Pokemon, what do you think you'd be?
Oh, good question. Well, when I am gaming, I tend to pick really beefy, tanky characters and things that can, really jump in and start fights and take a lot of hits. I also tend to like fire, but we also just talked about how not wanting to choose a path and getting to have infinite opportunities is what I love. So I don't want to say Eevee again, but then I could be Flareon, or I could be Umbreon, or I could, I have the choice of how I want to show up to a battle.
I think we should just say Eevee.
Yeah.
I think that's
everyone's
what your
going to be
saying.
This basic Pokemon girl just wants to pick Eevee for everything. Look, Eevee's good for a reason.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Eevee makes total sense. There's no other Pokemon I want to see in this spot. But what do you all think? Do you agree that all the Pokemon there are? And it would be an Eevee. Let us know in the comments. We'd be fascinated to read. Speaking of you all, it's now time for your community questions. I posted online, as I always do, asking for your question for Anna. Thank you so much for submitting them. Unfortunately, I won't have time to feature all of them, and I apologise if I mispronounce any of your names and handles as well. But to kick things off, Lyric of Wisdom would like to know, good luck with this one, your most memorable moment from doing your job at the Pokémon World Championships from the past 10 years.
Oh, it's easy.
Okay.
The opening ceremony for this year's Worlds at 2025, where we got to sing and dance, all of the people on stage, the dancers were so good. Getting to sing with Nate Wants to Battle, Cam Seti, Toasty Marshmallow, Michelle Ray, and Chi Chi, who were the vocalist for the song that went over the video that preceded it, and they also, Michelle was in the closing ceremony. Getting to be part of that team felt like I had ascended. And then, like I said, running on that stage knowing I'm about to sing and dance for this community that I love, just to celebrate this thing that I love. As much as I'd like to be this is a hard one, is not. That was the mountaintop experience, absolutely.
From Eevee to easy, absolutely. And it really, the opening for everything about the World Championships this year was, for me at least, and I'm sure it was for you as well, was sort of a wow. The sky really is the limit for Pokemon. If this is what we're doing now, seeing the backing dance up there, and it was obviously also professional. It's just think obviously we're in a bigger arena next year as well in San Francisco, 3 times the size of the arena that we had in Anaheim. And wow, let's just see where Pokemon reaches. So thank you very much indeed for that question, Lyric. And now next question here from Matt Absol Blogs Pokemon, another person I featured on the show, so that'll be linked below too. Do go and check that out. Famed shiny hunter and Pokemon content creator has said, I love your cosplays for Pokemon. Who is your favourite character in the franchise, and who do you connect with the most?
Favorite character? Favorites are so hard for me. Even picking 6 Pokemon is so hard. My impulse goes to Misty, because again, redhead characters, obviously it's easy to love Misty. There's so much about her that's easy to love. I feel like I'm showing up as that girl that's like, I like Evie and Misty and I'm 2 years old, you know? But like, she's also my favorite cosplay I think I've done. Jesse and James also, again, like a very stereotypical answer. And then on the complete other side of the spectrum, I have a huge soft spot for Professor Sada, and I don't know why, because I think she's a very bad person. But I like her a lot too. I don't know. I think the answer to that is I would have to really think about it. And after this, I'm going to be like, oh, duh, this is my favorite, and I should have said that. But I guess I'll say Misty, my redhead girl.
Okay, fair enough. And if you do mess me off with saying, oh, I wish I'd said this, I will just like overdub my voice to some footage of you talking and pretend that you're giving the answer. Perfect.
Thank you.
But Thank Misty makes total sense for that answer there. Yeah, I remember the Misty cosplay as well. But so many to choose from. Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Matt. Now, a question from Jacob Spadesman on Blue Sky. If you could compete in one of the games at the Pokémon World Championships, which would be the most likely and why?
Oh, I love this question. I think about it a lot. I used to commentate Heroes of the Storm, which is the Blizzard game that is very similar to Pokemon Unite in a lot of ways. So that game gets me really hype, and I understand it in a way that is deeper because I have commentated a game similar to that. So I would like to say maybe that's most likely from my background. However, the game that I've actually put the most competitive time into is TCG. I really, really enjoy it, and it's easy for me to fall into a habit of playing it a lot. So knowing what it takes to become a professional or competitive level gamer, and knowing that a lot of it is just loving a game enough to like disappear into it for hours every single day. So far, evidence points to TCG. I would like to say video game because I think that gets a lot of the most hype, but so far I also haven't fallen headfirst into the competitive. I get too excited about shiny hunting in the video game. And Pokemon Go, I probably have spent the most actual like hours in of any of the games, but I again end up focusing on the collector aspect and on the like friends aspect, sending and trading and all of that kind of stuff. So if I were to be a pro, I think it's most likely it would be in TCG. Final answer.
I hope that there's some tournament at some point where maybe you are able to compete. You know, whether it's the World Championships or whether it's an international championships, just to round out that experience.
I'm really, every year I'm like, I hope I have more time to play this year because maybe I can enter one of the side events. And I haven't felt ready yet, but maybe next year.
Maybe next year. You heard it here first. Well, thank you very much for that question.
Especially with the new, the way the new VGC stuff is going to be structured, and with Legends ZA coming out, I feel like it's likely I'm going to be spending a lot of time on my Switch. So we'll see.
Absolutely. And that new structure that you mentioned, Pokemon Champions, which we now know that the Pokemon World Championships 2026 will be played in a competitive focused game that seems geared towards the video game players. So again, awaiting further details, but that's what we know so far. Thank you for all of your questions, everybody. If you'd like to submit a question for a future guest on Chazingdra Chats, you can find my handles at Chazingdra across all socials, X, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and of course YouTube. That's where I post the call outs. I would love to hear what you'd love to hear. Right then, Anna, so we've heard a lot about you up to now, and we have a little bit of a teaser in terms of the musical performances you're doing later this year, but overall, what's next for you?
Next week I'm performing at a Renaissance fair in Oregon called the Shrewsbury Renaissance Fair. I'm doing 12th night, if you happen to be around that area. Following that, I will be on tour with Nate Wants to Battle. You know, maybe I'll start posting every day, begging him to let us perform Just Beyond on tour. We'll see. We'll see what happens. And then following that, I will be in a musical that has yet to be announced in Portland at a large professional theater that I'm excited about. Following that, I will be in Pippin at Stumptown Stages in Portland. So a lot of musical theater stuff coming up. In betwixt all that, you can find me on social media at Anna Prosser, making stupid videos for your enjoyment. And you can find me on stream at twitch.tv/Anna Prosser, where as soon as Legends ZA comes out, I will be all the time playing Pokemon. But right now, you can find me weekly there playing Dungeons and Dragons on my show, Stone's Throw Cities Beneath. And you can also find that on YouTube at Stone's Throw RPG. And yeah, the most important thing is I hope that, like I said, you'll follow me on Spotify or wherever you get your music and let me know what kind of music you would be interested in hearing. Whether, it's more covers of Pokemon or gaming songs, or whether you'd like to hear originals about certain things. I've been trying to think of what kind of original I could make to maybe celebrate the world's experience. So I would love to hear your feedback about what you'd like to hear from me and get some inspiration from you. So I hope you'll keep an eye out for my music. I also have some anime covers out and some stuff like that you can hear. So if you go to my profile on Spotify, you can find that.
So very exciting, and good luck for that. Final question for you, Anna, is looking back from now as someone who has all this experience and now the acting space, the hosting space, the performing space as well, and that journey is just beginning now, all the way back to the younger Anna who would, for example, learn the gaming ropes from their grandma and their dad. What advice would you give to that younger you?
One of my favorite quotes from Dolly Parton, who's kind of an icon of mine, as someone who's an extremely successful performer, artist, and also has kept a really beautifully compassionate and giving head on her shoulders. She said in an interview once, you have to be a little delusional to do this job, and you have to believe in yourself even when no one else does. So when I start not believing in myself, my mantra is be Dolly Delulu, be Dolly Delulu. So I don't know that my young self would quite understand that the way I do, but I think in short, I would want to tell them that I believe in them and that it's important to live your life with joy, and the best way to do that is by making sure you stay true to yourself and stay aware of what you believe about yourself. That's kind of convoluted and not very good advice for a kid, but I'm trying not to say believe in yourself, which is the most cliche answer to that. But I think it's believe in yourself, but with a steadfastness that is protected and unshakable by the people around you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for that, Anna, and thank you for that, Dolly. But the chat does not end there, because now we're getting into Anna Pross's Rapidash round, 15 or so minutes of bonus questions that Anna has not prepared for. And I mean, as with all my guests, there's so much more I want to take a deeper dive into. For example, you just said it's difficult for you to choose favourites, but maybe we'll limit it down to, a choice of a few in terms of favourite music artists and inspirations in the musical front, favourite hosts of yours that you enjoy watching, your favourite world's experiences or favourite world championships that you've been a part of, as well as things like hidden talents and fun facts and all sorts. If you'd like to spend a little bit more time with me and Anna, then that option is available to you. My Patreon is linked below. You can become a YouTube channel member, where you also get access to all sorts of other exclusive perks, including the 4 bonus videos per month, like one of these Rapidash rounds that I'm about to record with Anna. Fundamentally, though, really appreciate the fact that you've listened to or watched this episode in its entirety. But if you want to hear that from Anna, then those links are in the description below. But for now, Anna, thank you so much again for joining me on the show. I am taking a whole lot away from this episode, and I know that everyone who is watching and listening will do as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been so nice.
It's been wonderful to talk to you, and I guess you already gave a little shout out to your socials. That's what I normally ask my guests at this point, so I will just do a bit of YouTube spiel from this side of things. If you enjoyed, everybody, once more, please do like and subscribe. Always goes such a long way. And more than 70 episodes of the podcast on my channel at this point, with a broad range of guests, people outside the competitive community as well. And there's TCG, there's the Pokemon video game, there's Pokemon Go, there's Pokemon Unite. There's bound to be an episode for everyone, so use the hashtag 6Pokemon1LifeStory to spread the word about the show. I also spoke to Cam Steady recently on the show, another performer at the Pokémon World Championships, for example. And also on my channel, I stream competitively as well as casually, as well as Nuzlocke and all sorts. If you're a fan of everything that Pokemon video games have to offer, then my channel is the place for you, at Chazingdra across all socials. Episodes drop every Wednesday. My Discord is linked below, and my email is linked below as well. Right then, Anna, so with that being said, it's now time to get into your Rapidash round. If you're not joining us over on Patreon for that, then it's goodbye from Anna, or indeed as a YouTube channel member, and it's goodbye from me. See you next time on Chazingdra Chats, where we'll have another 6 Pokemon, 1 life story. Right then, Anna, so how are you feeling about these bonus questions?
What are the rules? I have to do it fast?
That's kind of what I say, to keep up with the Rapidash branding, but I mean, if you have something interesting to say, then we want to hear it. So it's very vague rules. But we'll start with your musical inspirations and your own favourite music artists.